Hello, good evening and welcome. I'm Tracy Hamston from Moor Meadows and welcome to the fourth in our series of online talks. A few words about Moor Meadows for those of you that aren't familiar with us. It's a Dartmoor-based community group of about 800 landowners, farmers and gardeners who are restoring and creating flower-rich grasslands on every scale, from meadows on garden roofs, shed roofs, and to acres of hay meadows. So a real kind of range of landowners. As anyone who has a meadow knows, they bring in wildlife, and the well-established ones contain such an abundance and diversity of life that they really are some of our best habitats. To support the formation of more groups like this across Devon, we've created an online Meadow Makers Forum. And I'll put a link to that up at the end of the evening, so you can have a look. And that's for people to be able to communicate with each other, share information, and hopefully create new groups all around Devon. And in fact, since we launched in the new year, we've already got some new groups in West Devon, South Devon, and Blackdown Hills springing up. So do check it out. As I say, I'll put a link in the chat bar. So roadside verges, why verges? Why are we so interested in them? Well, we've put together some great talks that hopefully answer those questions and really raise awareness of the importance of them for wildlife and showcase some really great examples of some verges and explain how you can get involved to save wildflowers and create valuable wildlife habitat. We've got some national specialists on road verge management and also a discussion on how to get involved, plus some time for questions at the end. So can I ask you to post your questions in the chat window on YouTube, and we'll get through as many as we can at the end of the talks. So with the backdrop of the loss of 98% of our species-rich grassland across the UK over the last 100 years, roadside verges can really be refuges to species that have largely disappeared from our countryside. And the fact that they're these linear corridors that run through our landscape can connect habitat for wildlife. So we'll be hearing from our speakers about the detail and the sort of nuance of management of verges in different situations. And we'll also be joined by Devon County Council ecologist Sarah Jennings, who will explain about the Devon Life on the Verge scheme. We encourage you to get involved. So our first speaker tonight is Leo Goubert, who's the senior ecologist for the Highways Agency in the Southwest. He's an ecologist with over 20 years experience in research, ecological surveys, habitat management and conservation in the UK and abroad. He's been working with Highways England since 2003 and has a wealth of experience in road ecology, roadside verge maintenance, mitigation for protected species, delivering biodiversity gain and targets within that road context. He's worked on a number of conservation projects aimed at promoting species and habitats along transport corridors and beyond. So welcome, Leo.
Hi, thank you very much, Tracy. Very kind of you. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here tonight. As Tracy said, I'm the senior ecologist for Highways England in the Southwest. And one of my jobs is to manage the road verges as sympathetically as possible, with nature in mind and biodiversity net gain whenever we can. So what I would like to do, I'm going to start just talking about the importance of, well, before I get there, I have to get through some bad news, I'm afraid, because roads and natural environment, they don't quite mix. One of the problems is that they cut through virtually every single terrestrial ecosystem in the world, but they have become a permanent part of the landscape. So roads have a great ecological impact on the environment, and many of these impacts we have only just started to understand. They becoming it's part of aquatic pollution through sediments, and all. If you imagine all the grit that we use in the roads to keep the traffic going in the winter, they all end up in the water. Things like tire dust, and they carry so much heavy metals that we only just started to understand the impact. it has on surrounding habitats. But noise, vibration, light, direct mortality of animals, and so on. But now we come to a point that our nature around us is such a precarious state that the road verges actually become such important sanctuaries for many species. And in the recent years, it has attracted much attention. It have become important areas of conservation in many parts of the world. If you take for Holland, for instance, I mean, nearly half of the road verge is actually protected because of the important habitat for plants and animals. So if you look at the road verges from above, you can actually see what that means. I mean, we're pretty much surrounded by agricultural landscape. So if you can see here, pastures and areas where they grow crops and food, they pretty much kind of dominate the landscape. In road verges, they offer that linear habitat running all the way along, connecting all these kind of tiny hedges. So they do offer a fantastic opportunity for wildlife. And it's often one of the best habitat qualities and the only link to past landscapes, because if you think of the landscape as a whole, a lot of it has been modified because of our needs, land use and agricultural use. So some of the road verges, they can be extremely valuable, especially when they're adjacent to SSSIs and other designated areas. They provide this fantastic connectivity throughout the landscape. And they're relatively undisturbed. Okay, you do get the traffic going past, but there is no dog walkers and there are no people cycling or motorbiking or on the habitat. So it's quite good in that respect. And it has this highly aesthetic value for us, and most of us don't really realize it. But for people that live in urban areas, this type of connection with the natural world actually is only achieved by when you look out the window of your car, or you look out the window of the bus or train, and then you see the greenery along these transport corridors. So one of the things we're going to talk about is what we called the soft state, which is in How is England terms, is we refer to any area that within the transport, the highway corridor, that is not tarmac or concrete. So we call that the soft state. And the area, when you think about the size of it in England and Wales, is considerable. So we're nearly 180,000 hectares. That includes all the big roads and the small county lanes as well. So How is England? Network covers about 30,000 hectares of soft state of verges. So that covers a range of different habitats, including grassland, woodland, heathland, marshes, ponds, etc. So there is a map here of the strategic road network, and it covers all the A roads, the trunk roads, and the motorways in blue. And to highlight the importance of these road verges, I can talk about a personal experience I had, which took me on a walk to the west of Exeter, all the way to Penzance. So I pretty much walked the whole route doing botanical surveys. So we covered, as myself and a colleague, another botanist. So we walked 284 kilometers, well, about most of it, but we surveyed 450 hectares of grassland and heathland along this route. So we covered Dartmoor here, Bodmin Moor, Gosmoor area, and all this area down here on the A38 as well, which is quite interesting. So this area is quite tiny. It represents not 2% of Great Britain, so it's just really, really tiny. But what we found was quite incredible, because we found over 330 different species of grassland and heathland plants. So that's nearly a quarter of the native species described in the Atlas of British and Irish Flora. So this is another simple study carried out by Plymouth University, which is kind of highlight the importance of the roadside verges when you compare to adjacent agricultural land. So if you look at this kind of light gray boxes here, these are the road verges, the diversity of species and abundance of bumblebees when compared to the fields. So you can see in every occasion, bumblebees abundance was much higher on the road verge. So this is it's been around for a while, but it's nothing really new. I mean, it has received a great deal of media interest and a lot of public interest in road verges, but it has been for a while. People recognize the importance of road verges. At the moment, they were built in large scale, starting in the late 60s when we had the major revamp of the building of the motorways across the country. So one of the things before we start working at the soft estate, we need to know what there is. So botanical surveys are quite important. So we do find information in a number of different ways at the moment. This is talking about Highways England and the strategic road network. So there are a number of ways that we do find information and collect this information. And we now have the environmental information system, which is an internal database where we collect and collate all the information from around our network. So once we collect information, we can start thinking about mapping and plotting them out and see where they are so that we can actually start managing them accordingly. So we know where we have this amazing meadows, which this one is on the A38, just on Dart Bridge Junction, which some of you might be quite familiar with it. We kind of identify where all the nasty species, like this one I wanted to bring up, which is the winter heliotrope, Pithecis fragrans, which is taking over many of our road verges because of its invasive nature. And as with it, we kind of identify areas where we could potentially improve or enhance. We identify areas where we kind of if I had potential hazards to passing traffic, and other work that needs doing, like woodland management, such as thinning and woodland creation. So management is really, really important for road verges, because if you think of it, it's an entirely man-made habitat, and it's pretty much very dynamic. It's in most cases, it's rich in nutrients. It has all the exposure to the sun, so things grow very quickly. And very quickly you can lose your grasslands, such as this sort of marsh orchids here being spotted by scrub. And things like ditches here, where you can get encroachment very quickly. And then you have kind of dead trees, like this one is near junction of Dean Pryor and the A38. And then over time, trees can easily overhang live carriageways and things. So this is kind of quite important for the safety aspect, as well as its kind of a biodiversity value as well. So here in the Southwest, we've been working with something we call the Grassland Management Plan, which is we collate all of the information, and then we put into our GIS-based system. So this is quite important to have. It's just an inventory of things that you have. It highlights locations of invasive species such as Japanese knotweed, Himalayan balsam, but the locations of notable protected and rare species. So it is quite interesting because and quite an efficient tool, because with all that information in there, we are able to pass on really simple, straightforward maps to contractors and people that can actually go out and do the work. So you can put in really simple work prescriptions in there, like control traveler's joys and Butler, cut and rake here and there. This is the junction, the center junction on the A30, just outside of Hale. This road here will take you to St. Ives. So it is quite important, simple, and the good thing about it is that you can cost it quite efficiently as well. So there are a number of things when it comes to management that you have to bear in mind. Is how easy is it? Do you have an issue with access? Because I mean, we're talking about kind of a roadside management at the industrial scale here. So it's really important that you have all these things kind of raised and mapped out and addressed. Such as this grassland. This one is quite nice, just outside Marsh Mills in Plymouth. It's really, really nice. But the problem to manage here in today's health and safety requirements, you need to close 2 lanes. So management can easily be quite expensive. And at this part of the network, you can only do the work at night as well because of traffic management restrictions. And the other thing is you know where your nice species are or things that you want to look after and preserve. So you know how to time your operations. You know what time machinery there is required. So there are quite a few things that you need to take in mind, to bear in mind. And also, on the urban parts of the network, you can't really work at night. So there's loads of things that you need to kind of bear in mind. And once you do, you cut and collect what you do with your risings. So is the timing of the operations suitable? Like you don't want to be cutting this here now in the early spring when the ground is covered in early flowering species like primroses and cowslips, etc. So do you require ecological supervision or any other type of supervision? But then for every job, there is the right tool. This is a model of a cut and collect machine. This one was built by one of our contractors in early, I think it must have been 2003 or 4. So what you do have is a flail and a vacuum. It actually cuts the grass and collects everything into the back of a trailer. And this is a much more modern version. This is a Dutch machine, and I photographed this one in Belgium a few years ago. And they're really highly efficient because the back of the trailer actually compacts all the risings that it collects along the way. So now things are getting quite fancy. Some of these are extremely efficient and very expensive machines, but then there are a number of other things that we can use and we have used in the past, like this it's got like a really powerful engine, and it's great for scrub clearance. You got this slightly older kind of cut and collect system. It kind of cuts and collects into this box, which you can empty nearby. And then obviously there are trimmers, and this is the most kind of recently quite popular on road verges now because they're really safe to use, are the remote control mowers. And some of them actually have a mechanical rake where you can adapt and the head. And then if you're more the traditional type, then there is always grazing, which is incredible. Unfortunately, is something that we can't use on road verges everywhere yet. But is something that we're looking seriously at, increasing the amount of our verges that are managed by grazing. So biodiversity in the soft state is incredible. I mean, a lot of people will miss most things because we're always in a rush and we driving at 70 miles an hour. We tend to kind of miss most things that all these photographs are here in Devon and Cornwall. So all of these things are there at the moment. So it kind of highlights the potential and actually highlights how precarious our surrounding landscape and the state of nature is, because they choose to live in a place that kind of it can be quite dangerous and noisy and kind of a lot of light disturbance as well. But this thing is there, the potential is there, and it's amazing when you actually get to see this. If you ignore the noise and the traffic, it's just it's amazing. It's just quite incredible. And the whole thing, the real challenge is to have that into this sort of context, because some of our roads, they see incredibly high amounts of traffic. And many of our work is actually had to be done at night because it's the only time we can actually have a road or a lane closure. And road verges, because they're road verges, they're constantly under attack. So we get lorry fires. I pretty much seen one of my really nice orchid sites being cremated by a lorry on fire along D30 not long ago. This was at a site near Boventa in Cornwall. I haven't been back this year yet, but last year I had only one species of orchids back. So I lost 2 at that event. A lot of our services, like telecoms and gas, actually, they are buried next to roadsides. So people come in and dig new trenches, or they have to repair. Or so at the same time, this is a perfect kind of opportunity to spread invasive species like Japanese knotweed, or in this case, Pitacitus fragrans, because it's it will quite easily spread by rhizomes. Litter is another huge problem that we have. It's a lot of it and very frequently, so it's really difficult to keep an eye on that. And along trunk roads, it's the responsibility of local authorities, and not many of them actually equipped to deal with this amount of litter and where it is, because you need specific special vehicles and training to stop and collect all the litter. And things will vary from kind of chocolate wraps to fridge freezers and wardrobes and double beds and that sort of stuff. The other thing that we have is road verges are actually perfect habitat for many noxious and invasive species. And because of their high nutrient content on soil, they spread quite happily. And we do have spillages, and some of them can be really annoying, and it can be anything, because everything now is carried over our road. So diesel, chemicals, milk. I think one of the most difficult spillages they had to deal with was chocolate, because they transport chocolate warm in these massive tankers. So in a cold night, one of them went over, and the chocolate spilled over, and you got sorted quite quickly in contact with the road surface, and it took them a long time to actually clean that up. But that doesn't stop us to kind of maximize the potential of our verges to biodiversity. So a few years ago, we carried out a study here in the Southwest. This is along 42 sites in Devon, Cornwall, verges of varying botanical interest. And we came up with quite a lot of different pollinators. Especially, it was a study focused on pollinators, but we did collect a number of other species of terrestrial invertebrates. So the scheme in total they found 866 different taxa, including 32 different species of bees, 16 nationally scarce species, 4 species of principal importance, and 1 endangered species. And I think one of the things is really because not many people are looking at road verges yet. I think things will probably change in the next 10 years or so. So this was quite incredible, a good finding. So we do have a little bit of money every year for biodiversity improvements. And one of the things for me was to actually find where we could get the most of our money, where we can create habitat, or where we can enhance the connectivity potential of our road verges. So we did a study, it's kind of another GIS exercise. So we collated all the data that we had, threw into the computer. We used a lot of LiDAR and aerial photography. With that, we were able to identify key areas within the soft state that could benefit from habitat creation and maybe used as stepping stones for species. So using that example, this map here kind of highlights all the key pollinating species, including butterflies and bees, moths, and the darker it is, the better, the higher the permeability in grasslands. So with this area here, which is roughly between Ivy Bridge and Ashburton, we identify potential grassland creation schemes. because you have to take into a lot into consideration, such as practicality, and can you actually park? Can you do your work on the verges? Can you cut and collect? So there are a number of different things that you have to take into account. So species-rich grassland creation, I've been doing this for several years, and I have been doing, one way I've been doing this is by harvesting material on species-rich grassland, like this one was on the A30 near Oakhampton. We own a few acres of species-rich grassland in the field. So what we did, we collected, we cut the material, collected all that green hay. This was cut as a late July, early August to maximize viable seeds. So once we did that, we spread the material on prepared ground, so all that green hay being spread. And what we end up with is a replica of the meadow, pretty much a replica of the meadow that you started off with, or the material that the donor site. So some of the species, they take slightly longer, but in the long term, you start seeing many similarities between the donor site and the receptor sites. So we have been doing regularly this now, not just with this method, but we're using seeds, local gathered seeds, and there are a number of schemes starting in the next 5 years or so in the Southwest. So this was one of the latest schemes. This one was on the A38 between Ivy Bridge and Ashburton. So I named that one Turning A Roads into B Routes. So we started off with verges like this. This was taken in the spring. This was late. This was May 2017. 17, 18. And this is a section of the verge with very little, dominated by fossil grass and typical MG1 type of grasslands, really rank, lots of gorse and bramble. So what we did with that, with using that system, kind of preparing, treating a lot of the bramble and stuff I had in advance of the scheme, we're actually able to turn into something like that. So using seeds this time from an ancient meadow in Devon. So we did that for miles, and the impact is quite magnificent. The visual attraction of it is beautiful. And the nice thing is this is kind of pretty much south-facing here. And the other side was kind of flowering at a later stage. So you had this for the northbound here, the A38 flowering first, followed by that, which is quite interesting. And this was actually quite fantastic. And for me, the whole thing was aimed at biodiversity, especially. It's kind of promoting biodiversity on the Verges, but I never really expect the impact they had on people. So we had so many people ringing in and thanking for the work. And it just highlights how important and how connected we are with our natural surroundings. So there are a number of other things that we have done. This is a tree study, which is a software that we use to assess ecosystem services, and quite important tool because it puts a value to the ecosystem services. So this is just on the A38 west of Exeter. We came up with a figure 303,000 trees, and these are the main species: ashfield, maple, and sycamore. And then it tells kind of things like a pollution removal that these assets have the potential to remove from the environment. Carbon storage, things like avoided runoff, which is quite fantastic. And then the amenity value, and one that I kind of like is the screening value. So if you had to replace the trees with a similar fence or something like that to screen the road from near side residents. Another scheme which is quite interesting is this is a bypass, Bodmin to Indian Queens bypass on the A30. And all this area here is triple SI, so gorse and Tregorse moors. It's now called Mid-Cornwall moors, where the marsh fritillary, it was quite one of the main species there. So we trying to boost the habitat within that area. What we did, again, we used our habitat connectivity model. So these are the areas, this is roughly where Moor is, and which they were extinct for a few years at the end of 2010 until recently. They've been found, recorded again. So what we wanted to do is to link this population. So we used the modeling and then identified areas that could benefit from further planting of Devil's Bit scabious, which is the food plant for the caterpillar. So we collected seeds. This was an exercise between Natural England and How is England staff. We collected loads of seeds. We handed them over to the Eden project, which then created the plug plants. And then 2 years later, I think out of the 10,000 plugs, we planted at about 9,850, managed to establish well. And it's quite interesting to see late in September, October. So we're now hoping, I couldn't go there last year, but I'm hoping to see some, really hoping to see some marsh fritillary caterpillars there. That would be amazing. So the other thing that we do quite, and we have to work with and around, is the hazel dormouse. This is a kind of a distribution map using our records and the existing surrounding records using our habitat connectivity tool. And one thing that we realized that they're quite happy. They're really keen on the fast lane, and they will nest very close to road verges. They not only build with the summer nest, but they will actually hibernate next to the roads. So we got hibernation nests in there as well. So this is great to have them, and then obviously it's a great opportunity to actually boost habitat connectivity, not just for dormice, but for birds and bats. So again, we're using our tool and looking at the practicality size of it. We've been doing a lot of tree planting recently. So basically, we want to enhance the potential here, connectivity potential along the verges. And this is particularly important where you have really leg hedges in the surrounding land. So this is kind of establishing quite well, and I'm hoping this will green over very quickly in the next couple of growing seasons. So obviously this is a regional concern, because in the spirit of How is England's internal safety campaign, we have to look after the dormice as well. So we've been looking at a way to keep them safe. So the question that we have is, are we on the right road? Are we on the right direction in order to accommodate biodiversity and wildlife on our verges? I think one of the main challenges is we need to challenge the way we have done things so far, because at the moment we come to a point that we need to start thinking seriously about how to integrate nature and wildlife in our road designs and road maintenance. And the idea is not just keep that within the road corridor, but the whole point is to actually influence people so that they can do this in the garden, with the local school, the open green spaces, or anywhere where they can promote nature. So I'm quite positive, and I think I've been doing this job for long enough to see that a lot has changed. And I think one of the main things that has changed is the interest in road verges. Because when I started, this is kind of, it was before it was fashionable. When you say, oh, what have you been doing? I've been writing a management plan for the M5 between Tewkesbury and Cheltenham. And people, oh, but why bother? And I said, well, you know, that's the thing, that there are lots of potential in there. And I'm really glad that this has happened. And I hope that this enthusiasm and this interest will only grow in the future. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Leo. That was really interesting. We've had loads and loads of questions come through, and it's really, really good to hear the story and the management behind those scenes that we see when we're driving up and down the A38. So we've got quite a lot of questions, which we'll save for the end. So in the meantime, I'm going to introduce our next speaker, Kate. So Kate Petty is the Road Verge campaign manager at the plant charity, but Plant Life, sorry, Kate there. She's worked at Plant Life since October 2018, and as part of the Verge campaign, Kate works with councils, community groups, contractors and statutory and highways agencies to see road verges better managed for wildflowers and the wildlife they support. So welcome, Kate.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for the invitation to come and speak tonight. It's, as Leo has been saying in your introduction at the beginning, Tracy, it's so wonderful to see the masses of enthusiasm and interest in species-rich grassland, in meadows and in road verges at the moment. And at Plant Life, we're dedicated to conserving the UK's wild plants and fungi. So it's a real pleasure to have this opportunity to chat to you all this evening and hopefully inspire and empower you to get involved in transforming road verges for wildlife. So the Plant Life started the Road Verge campaign back in 2013, really in response to verges being mown down in full flower and the disparity between what verges could be versus what all too frequently that they were becoming. And since that time, there's sort of really been two things that are central to the campaign. One of those is the advice and the guidance that we provide. And the second one is really the petition to councils, asking councils and landowners to change the way that they manage road verges for wildlife, and that's really captured the public interest, and now that's been signed over 127,000 times now. And back when I joined the campaign in 2018, thanks to funding from the Prince of Wales's charitable fund, that's really allowed the campaign itself to blossom and has allowed us to work more with councils and highways organisations and local groups to create more partnerships around the UK to really kickstart more of this transformation of road verges across the country. And a lot of the work that the campaign has been doing is really to raise awareness of the importance of these wonderful habitats and to change perceptions of what verges can be. As already has been noted tonight, meadows are becoming so increasingly rare. We've lost so many of them, and many people won't have had the chance to experience that, or may have not grown up knowing what road verges can be like, or rather presume all they can be is litter-strewn thickets or sort of really highly manicured lawn grass areas as well. I've mentioned it, and it's been mentioned before. We're making a lot of noise about road verges at the moment, and really, why do they matter so much? And one thing road verges really are is diverse in their nature as the landscapes that they pass through across the country, and over 700 species of wildflower can be found on verges, and that's nearly 45% of the total flora of the UK. Some of those, of course, are your very common species, your daisies and your dandelions, but others are incredibly rare, like the Deptford pink or fen ragwort, which can now only be found on road verges. And as Tracy said at the beginning, we've lost 98% of our wildflower meadows since the 1930s. So road verges really are now this really vital refuge for so many wildflowers. And as we like to say, a Plant Life where wildflowers lead, wildlife follows. And road verges support such a wealth of other biodiversity, your bees, bugs, birds, bats and butterflies. They all rely on these wonderful habitats. Often we do focus on biodiversity and the innate value of plants themselves, but as Leo has mentioned, road verges can also provide a wealth of benefits in terms of ecosystem services. So, for example, a well-managed verge can really lock in, it can sequester carbon into the verge, and verges can act as buffers to noise and air pollution, and increasingly well-being as well. For some people, as Leo said, verges are their only connection to nature really as they drive or walk past. And we're increasingly recognizing how important that connection to nature is, and this sense of really being connected to the flowers on the verges on your doorstep has really blossomed, I think, during lockdown as well, where we've been forced, many of us, to be stuck in the same place for so long, but can actually see the life cycle of those plants, and to see that flowering happening, and see the potential of what those verges could be. Unfortunately, on a sort of wider scale, for a great number of years, we've created a pretty tough situation for verges out there through increased mowing, or not being able to mow enough, through increased nitrogen emissions, and increased fertilizer use, and also the difficulties of budget cuts as well. So there's really been a perfect storm that's engulfed verges. And because of that, Plant Life set out a new vision for verges, which is one where they're managed with nature in mind, whilst keeping our roads safe as well. And road verges really are sort of a ready-made network that has great potential to create these wonderful ribbons of grassland or mini meadows on verges throughout the country, by restoring what we already have and add more and more flower-rich habitats along our verges. And to only see verges as the piece of land next to a road is to miss out on a really big opportunity. So in order to make the most of this opportunity, and to see this vision be realised, at Plant Life we've put together these guidance to encourage management regimes to be changed, as well as to inspire people as to what verges can be, and to foster a love of these plants and all the wildlife that grow on these important habitats. And this practical guidance sets out a different approach to management, and this different approach is one that can really transform the whole verge network, not just isolated pockets. And this is a great way to improve not only biodiversity, but to also make our verge management regimes more sustainable and more cost efficient over time as well. So we have 2 guides that are freely available on the Plant Life website. The first of those is the Good Veg Guide. This was the first guide that we published, and we've just reissued a new edition earlier this year. This really is a go-to guide for all things verges, all of your different types of verges, verge habitats, so grass verges, woodland verges, urban verges. It also includes information on sowing wildflower seeds, and it has answers to some of the most frequently asked questions that we get through to the campaign. Then the second document that was published back in September 2019, which already seems a lifetime ago, doesn't it? But this guide is more of a technical guide, best practice guide, that was put together through a cross-sector partnership effort involving national highways organisations like Highways England. Leo was also involved in the partnership group that put this together. It also involved some of the big contractors, Skanska and Kia, who carry out some of the road verge management across the country. It also brought together other wildlife organisations, the wildlife trusts and butterfly conservation, to bring together, to coalesce around this new guidance to deliver a transformation of verges across the country. So I'm going to give you a whistle-stop tour through some of the guidance, pulling out some of the key principles behind creating great verges, some of the different management scenarios, and to share some of the top tips that we've gathered from working with councils and community groups across the country. So to start off, some of the key principles for creating great grassland great grassland verges. So the first of those is annual management. This is really so important. So studies of meadow management has shown that no cutting and cutting too much can both cause problems for species-rich grassland. So without regular management, the thicker grasses can quickly dominate. They can become your thugs of the verge and crowd out many of the delicate wildflowers. So in order to maximise the potential of our verges, of the grassland, annual management or some sort of cyclical management, maybe at least every 2 years, is the sort of ideal thing to do for these verges. And then the second sort of key principle is that the timing of this management is really important. And it might seem very obvious to say this, but it's really important to let the wildflowers complete their life cycle, so to grow, flower and set seed before they're cut. And this way we're really working with nature. Nature's doing a lot of the work for us. The seed bank, in the soil can be replenished, and natural regeneration can be given a helping hand. So getting the timing is right, because if we cut too early or too frequently or too late, we can quickly get rid of so many species and to start to reduce the floral diversity and the quality of the verge. So for grassland species, which are the options in this table that comes from managing grassland road verges, the ideal option really is a two-cut management approach, which mimics traditional meadow management. So cutting twice a year and collecting the cuttings where you possibly can, and a bit more on that just later. There are different ways of different timings depending on your verges, the types of species that grow on them, or perhaps where in the country you're based, because of changes in flowering time. But this is a good blueprint to work from. Of course, there are other options in terms of timings for woodland or shaded verges too, which I'm going to mention a bit later too. So I mentioned it just then, the importance of removing the grass cuttings or risings or clippings, as they're often called in different ways. Why is this so important? Well, low soil fertility is really a key thing if you want to improve the wildlife value of your verge and to reduce the burden from management over time. And this is because wildflowers do best in low fertility soils. So collecting the grass cuttings, you take away the nutrients and you start to decrease this over time. You also remove the thatch of grass that can develop. So you're opening up the grassland sward, allowing the more delicate wildflowers to thrive. When you repeat this year on year, you'll get less grass growth year on year, and therefore sort of reducing the management burden. And I know that's all very well to say, but how on earth do you carry that out on a road network? Whereas, as we've heard from Leo, there are such logistical challenges as well. And it is a challenge, I'm not going to lie, but it isn't impossible. And more councils and organisations are finding ways to bring collection of arisings into their cutting regimes and are benefiting in the long term from doing that. So there are lots of ways that this can be done mechanically. In the guidelines, it goes through different types of machinery towards the back. There's everything from your sort of large scale suction flail harvesters to hand controlled motorized power tools. And there's a really great video from the Wales Biodiversity Partnership Conference from last year. There was a whole session on one afternoon on road verge management, and there's a great video that was put together by local authorities across Wales that looks at the different types of machinery that they're using to manage their meadows and their road verges. So I'd really recommend having a look at that if you want some more detail on the types of machinery you can use. And of course, if you don't have machinery, if that isn't an option and you're looking to do things on a smaller scale, a trusty rake and lots of volunteer involvement can get you to the same place. And sometimes it's useful to know that it's not necessarily removing the grass cuttings completely from the verge. Sometimes they can be collected up to make habitat piles in the verge, or moved to the back part of the verge, and that works quite well as well. So moving on to the different scenarios that you might find. And this one, enhancing amenity verges, links quite nicely into the previous slide on the collection of grass cuttings. So collecting grass cuttings in this way through cut and collect, is shown in the photo here, can be a great way to enhance your amenity verges. Currently, amenity grassland might not have much biodiversity value, but it has a lot of potential for improving biodiversity and the visual appearance of verges as well. Equipment like this does cost money, of course, but several councils are using invest to save budgets, or budgets that are linked to having declared a climate emergency or a biodiversity crisis, to invest in this type of machinery. There's a great case study from Dorset Council who developed a business case around buying this kit, because it's significantly reduced their management burdens, both in terms of time and money. This sort of kit, as mentioned, probably works best in urban locations. So for example, in Dorset, where they were once cutting 12 times a year, through implementing cut and collect like this, they now are managing these sorts of urban verges and amenity verges now only sort of 2 to 3 times a year. So having a verge that is quite tightly mown, it's quite a short sward, can actually be good for biodiversity and wildflowers. And you can also benefit this by reducing the frequency of the cuts, and this in turn can help the flowers to grow back and to better support the wildlife on the verges. Open grass verges are likely to be the main type of verge you might come across. Many of these have suffered from either too much cutting or conversely under management, but they can be restored with some tender loving road verge management. You'll probably need to sort of invest in a short burst of intensive management on these verges initially, to sort of reinstate the grassland areas, if grassland is what your goal is at the end of it, and also to sort of kickstart a reduction in soil fertility as well. So on these sorts of verges, you might look to cut and collect the arisings more than once or twice in the first year, maybe clearing some scrub as well. But these costs that you might have to invest can probably be recouped over 3 to 5 years. And then by implementing a good management regime, you can continue to reduce costs and benefits in the medium to long term. And there are 2 things to keep in mind when restoring or improving the quality of verges like this. First of those, that if you're involved in meadow management, you're likely to be familiar with already, which is yellow rattle, our favourite meadow maker plant. That, for those of you who don't know, is a semi-parasitic plant that reduces grass growth. So this can really help to open up the verge, allowing wildflowers to thrive. And of course, the reduced grass growth means less need to cut the grass too. And if you want to know more about yellow rattle specifically, there's a webpage on the main Plant Life website dedicated to yellow rattle, and all of the sort of links I've mentioned will either be going around in the chat now, or will be sent around for you afterwards. And then the second one to mention is bare ground. So by scarifying the verge, either when it's cut or prior to reseeding, can really open the verge up, allow bare earth, which is great for the new germination and establishment of new wildflowers, and is also a great thing for insect life too. The third management scenario you might find is maintaining and restoring species-rich verges. These are, of course, verges that are already high quality and support lots of wildlife already, and these sites offer the maximum biodiversity value when they're managed and well maintained. Like any grassland, these sites need some sort of annual management to keep them in good shape, and collection of cuttings to keep the soil fertility low. Often these really are your local wildlife sites, your protected verges or your special verges. They're called slightly different things in every county. And often these verges will need specialist management. So your local ecologist or your local botanist will know best, because sometimes they do have rare species, not just rare plant species, and they'll need that specialist advice for management. They can quickly lose their wildlife value if they aren't managed well, but these sites can often be brought back simply by restarting a good management regime, like we've talked about already, because a lot of the time the plants are still there in the sward, or the seed is still there in the seed bank. So by managing it correctly, you can wait and see what will start to come back, and hopefully your verge will start to bounce back into life when it's managed well. And Leah's already talked about the importance of mapping your sites and knowing what you have, where you have it. So by mapping these sites and clearly marking them, that can be a great help when it comes to the tricky logistics of managing a whole county or a whole network of verges. And then the fourth scenario you might find yourself in or want to get involved with is the creation of new species-rich verges. So on brand new earthworks or on brand new road development, these can be a really cost-effective and sustainable use of the new verges that have been created, not only by helping the road blend into the landscape, but they're a really important way of creating more species-rich grassland, which is declined so much in the UK. And by planning early, you'll save costs and management that's required over time. And this is because the sort of real guiding principle to creating species-rich verges is to avoid the use of fertile topsoil. By using hardly any fertile topsoil, you won't be continually fighting the regrowth of rich grass. And if you're looking for a great example of how this has been done in practice, then do have a look at the Weymouth Relief Road, which is championed a lot, and deservedly so, because it's a brilliant example for this. There are lots of different methods that you can use to create new verges, whether that's a brand new verge, or whether it's creating a species-rich verge from a verge that is currently species poor. So that might be working with natural colonisation if your new verge is nearby a species-rich verge, or it might be natural seeding, like green hay from a freshly harvested meadow, as Leo's already talked about as well. Sometimes bought seed mixes might be your only option, and in that case, we'd always recommend our keeping the wild in wildflower advice. So using British seed and as seed that's as sourced as locally as possible and suitable for the area to keep the distinctiveness of the natural flora. And there's lots more info on sowing seeds, especially in urban areas, in the new edition of the Good Verge Guide, as well as in the Managing Grassland Road Verges Guide as well. So I've talked up till now about mostly grassland verges, but of course other types of verge are available. So what if you have a woodland or a shaded verge? What should you do then? Often these verges are rich in early flowering woodland species, your primroses, your bluebells and your ramsons, and often they have thin grass growth too, so they often don't need cutting very often. So often these verges don't need cutting between January and mid-July, but some sort of cutting annually can help keep overgrowth of brambles and scrub at bay. And you can treat sort of steep shaded lane sides in the same way as this as well. And often, because you have little grass growth, you don't really need to worry so much about collecting the arisings that come from this as well. So to start to finish off, just to share with you some of the top tips that are really useful and that we've gathered from different councils and groups across the country. The first of these is what we like to call the Biodiversity Buzz Cup. Now, often people think verges have to be long to be wildlife friendly, but as I briefly mentioned earlier around amenity grassland and urban verges, low-growing verges can be rich in short-growing wildflower species that are really brilliant for pollinators. So by cutting verges around 3 to 6 centimetre cutting height about every month, about 6 weeks, this buzz cut approach can be really useful in areas where you have concerns about longer grass, whether that's concerns from perceptions around it, not being neat and tidy or a messier look, or where people need access to verges or access to green space, or where there are safety concerns as well. So adopting this approach around junctions, along sight lines and in safety areas can leave you that double win-win of delivering safe roads, but also having the biodiversity benefits as well. Then another great tip that lots of people are implementing, as you can see in the pictures here, is framing verges. And this can really, again, help with tackling negative perceptions around changes in management and also communicating the change that's happening too. So by framing the verges, we simply mean cutting the first metre or the first swathe cut of your verges, your sort of one mower width along the front of your edge of your verges. And this really keeps the verges looking tidier. It helps people know that the longer grass is being left intentionally and the verges aren't being neglected. And it also has two other really important benefits. It helps to keep roads safe. It preserves good road visibility and can ensure safety at junctions, for example. And it also creates a really nice structural diversity in your verge. So it helps to keep variety in your verge, which is great. So you have some shorter growing grass and longer growing grass into sort of shrubs and trees if your verge is wide enough to achieve that. And that's great not only for the different types of plants that it would support, but for the different types of insects that it would help support as well. And then the third top tip is around communication and engagement. And these are really important things. And it's really fantastic to see that, the growing awareness and interest in the natural world and attitudes are changing, but it can really help the success of a project to communicate what is happening instead of just, say, leaving it to grow and not telling anybody about that. So there have been fantastic examples in recent years from councils and community groups of the signage that has been used on road verges to show that management is intentional and to really communicate the importance of it and to help people get involved and feel a part of that as well. There are also great examples of local groups and the development of council and community initiatives collectively to help increase the wildlife value of verges. So that people getting involved, working with their councils, whether that's in the collection of grass cuttings where it's safe to do so, whether it's sowing yellow rattle or wildflower seed, or conducting even botanical surveys on verges. So I just wanted to quickly share with you some good examples, some good news stories of what's happening around the country. There's so much going on and it's wonderful to see. So to pull out, I think, a few things for you, in Denbighshire, in North East Wales, now nearly 80% of the Verge network is on a biodiversity cut. So it's cut once a year after August, and increasingly they're looking to use cut and collect on their network to improve the condition of verges, and they're sort of doing that in a planned way, and they're also mapping the Verge network to have a look at to identify suitable areas to create new wildflower-rich verges. There are other schemes around the country, like the Get Bath Buzzing campaign to manage verges and green space better for pollinators. Down in Cornwall, the council have started to invest in cut and collect machinery, following Dorset's great example. Several councils, Derbyshire and Cheshire and Cheshire West, for example, have started consultations with residents on grassland and wildflower management. Lots of different councils are starting grass cutting trials, for example, in Essex, and also in the east of England, over in Cambridge. The council has just announced a new management plan for the whole county, which is brilliant. And other councils are adopting Plant Life's No Mow May campaign. For example, Cardiff Council and Thanet down in Kent have just announced that they're going to be doing that this year, which is great to see. And then on a national scale, Highways England announced just before Christmas that they're going to be implementing a new low nutrient soil policy on their new grassland verges along new roads, which is all the sort of low nutrient soil fertility and not putting topsoil back on, which is fantastic to see. And as well as the sort of changes at a national level and the council level, it's really wonderful to see so much happening at the grassroots level, with everything, you know, sort of you're doing down in Devon with Moor Meadows and the Life on the Verge Biosphere project. There's so much happening with local groups getting involved. So just to highlight a few others here that might be an inspiration for you. So we have Restoring Shropshire's Verges project from Shropshire, funnily enough, Verging on Wild from Herefordshire, the Worcester Environmental Group, Wildflower Lewis down in East Sussex, and On the Verge Stirling. And there's also a sister group of sorts, another On the Verge, that's based in Cambridge as well. And this is only a handful. There are more groups popping up, and we're having more conversations with people across the country. So in Warwickshire, in Parish, down in Hampshire as well. So much is going on, which is wonderful to see. And all of these sorts of groups are in discussions with councils at different levels, from the parishes through district and boroughs up to the county level. So really making a contact with your councillors, your elected representatives, is a great way to go if you're looking to get started in your local area. All of these groups as well have invested in some really great signage and logos, and are active in their communities and online via social media too. And they're working on a great variety of different projects, from surveying special verges to sowing yellow rattle and collecting cuttings, to really working with the council on communicating what communities want to see in their local area, and to reassuring them really that having a wild and more wildlife friendly approach is really wanted. And I know often it can seem like there's a lot in the guidance and there's a big buzz around road verges at the moment, but goodness me, where to start? And really don't set yourself an uphill struggle. Choose the areas of verges, or whether that's the verges in your area or verges across your whole network, that are the easiest parts to start with. So whether that's a flatter verge or a wider verge, start there or work outwards from your most sort of top quality verges, and plan your restorations in stages. Don't try and feel that you have to tackle everything all at once, because you can start restoring your key stretches of verges, and then from there work to create larger and larger areas of better habitat, which in the end will also be more efficient to manage as well, and nature will help you in terms of the natural seeding and the spread of species too. And you'll start to create this larger network, and we'll see this wider transformation as well. And of course, you know your local verges best. So take our guidance as a blueprint and bring to it your know-how and your skills and your local knowledge on your doorstep, and really use that to create management plans that really engage and start to transform the verges in your area, and start to bring back wonderful colour like this to our verges. And really together we can help to save road verge wildflowers and to transform the network as a whole. And we're more than happy to give advice and showcase and celebrate ongoing progress. So please do feel free to get in touch with us at Plant Life, and we're more than happy to help. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you. I'm really inspired even more now. That was really, really good. I'm going to be quite cheeky and just ask you one question before we bring Sarah in. We just wondered how much interest, Kate, that you've had from Devon councils for your scheme.
I met with the council team. Goodness, the pandemic has changed my perspective of time, but I think it was last February. I met with Tom Whitlock from the council and had a meeting with the highways team there. And I know that the council, having declared a climate emergency, that there are things starting to happen. But it would be good to pick that up again, and seeing as there's so much support locally on the ground to really push that forward.
Great. Well, to maybe answer that and push that forward a little bit more, we've got Sarah Jennings to join us, who is a senior ecologist at Devon County Council. Hi, Sarah. You made it.
Yes,
Excellent.
sorry about that. I clicked on the wrong link.
So Sarah will hopefully tell you a little bit about the Devon Life on the Verge scheme, and I'm just going to put the link for that in the comments box, so you'll have that to be able to have a look at, while Sarah perhaps gives us a bit of a run through.
Okay, so hi, this is very strange, isn't it? I have no idea who's out there. So I'm Sarah Jennings, I'm the County Ecologist at Devon County Council. I have literally just stepped in to do this evening, so I am not very prepared, but I have been involved in verge management for over 10 years in Devon. So hopefully I'll be able to answer some of your questions. And my brief for this from Tracy was this is largely questions and answers. Is that right? So I'm literally going to whiz through just some very basic stuff on what we're doing in Devon. And unfortunately, because I couldn't get in, I don't know what the previous presenters were saying, which isn't very helpful. So sorry if I overlap a bit, but basically, as you probably know from now, Devon County Council is responsible for managing the majority of the road verges in Devon. People don't really realise that. So it's Devon County Council as the Highways Authority. So Leo for Highways England manages the trunk roads. So the majority are DCC. Until about, 4 or 5 years ago, we had quite a good verge management policy where we have special verges and we cut those late in the year. We then had budget cuts, and so we effectively were following plant life guidance. We stopped cutting verges altogether, apart from visibility displays. So we do now only cut verges where there is a visibility issue for health and safety. But things are a bit more complicated than that. So we also have contracts with parishes and some of the town councils. So Exeter City Council manage their own verges. And obviously farmers might go and cut verges. So we get lots of complaints sometimes about verge cutting that wasn't us. So it's a very complicated world out there in terms of verges. So in terms of life on the verge, which is what Tracy's asked me to talk about, we have communities have been in touch with me for years wanting to manage verges, and we wanted communities to do it, but it was very hard because of health and safety issues, which I don't know if anyone has touched on yet. But we had a bit of a breakthrough about 4 years ago when DCC stopped cutting verges, and so highways were a lot keener to involve communities in managing verges. And also we set up the road warden scheme. Highways set up a road warden scheme that some of you from parishes might be involved in. So we had a road warden officer who was given health and safety training and responsible for salting roads and potholes, but also grass cutting. So if any of you have got a road warden, do talk to them. So, but the road warden scheme meant that we could dovetail on that and sort out the health and safety issues that have been holding us back. So it was at that point that we basically produced the Life on the Verge guidance in Devon, which I hope lots of you, we have tried to do lots of publicity. Tom Whitlock, who was just mentioned, has been doing lots of work on this for the last few years and talking to parishes and doing going to Highways Parish events and talking about it at various events that we've been running. And we have produced, Tracy has sent a link, I think, I'll just hold it up. So we produced this guidance document that basically just talks you through the key steps that you have to go through if you want to manage your verges. So do take a look at it. We need to update it a bit, but it does give you the basics. So the first step is to contact the DCC environment team. So that was Tom Whitlock. He is now passing this over to a new member of staff, Mike, who is going to be here tonight. And so we can give you those contact details through Tracy. It's then you can chat to us about the Verge and the health and safety issues and the e-learning that we have on our website, just to ensure that you know what to do. So you have to go through these health and safety. It's an e-learning course. I don't think it takes very long, but it lets you know whether it will be safe to manage the verges. So there are lots of verges that we can't let you manage, such as the North Devon Link Road, because it's just too dangerous. So you have to go through this bit of training and then you'll be aware of what you have to do. And it might be that you need somebody with what's called Chapter 8 training to set up the road safety measures, and your road warden would have Chapter 8 training. And you then, once we have the okay that it's safe, we need to speak to the neighbourhood highways officer to check that they don't cut that bit of the verge, because if they're going to cut it anyway, there's no point in you managing it for wildlife. And also, we just need them on board generally. And basically that's it. So we then have lots of stuff about, check what you've got there first. Don't just, I'm sure you've gone through all of this already tonight. Don't just storm in and chuck wildflower mix everywhere, because we don't want generic species mixes. We want to try and promote what we already might have on that verge. So lots of people want easy wins, which isn't necessarily the best way to go for wildlife. Thinking about protected species issues. So we have lots of dormice, obviously, across Devon if you're doing scrub clearance. And then we have links to the plant life guidance as well. So that's a really quick run through. And we really, really do need your feedback. So we're working with lots of community groups across the county. We have very limited resource. But we do need your feedback to know how this is working. That's it.
Great. Whistle Stop Tour. Yes. So I've been involved with our local Verges here, and it's been quite an interesting process, partly because we've had all the COVID restrictions which came in pretty much when we started off. So we've been doing lots of solitary surveying and things whilst walking dogs and whatnot. But there was a few quite common questions that have come back to me through the forum actually, and through email questions from people all over Devon that are quite keen to start. But I think it's those first steps. They've probably seen a verge, been worried that it's been cut at the wrong time, or just have a passion to go out and do something. One of the things was, do you have to be part of a community group or a parish council? How does that work? Do you have to be a sort of established group to be able to start on that process?
No, I mean, and so you could be an individual. We've got individuals who are going out and managing verges. So no, the most important thing from the DCC perspective is that you just take a look on our website and go through the steps in the guidance so that health and safety is sorted, and you don't start managing a verge which is going to be cut, because you'll just then get very angry.
Yeah, so a couple of questions you've answered. So you've said about the start points and those kind of first steps. So if you've kind of gone through those steps with Devon County, I'm aware, I know when we looked at some of ours, that Devon County Council owned some of the verges, but some of them were owned by various landowners. So do you need permissions from all of those people before you can start down that route? How do you kind of...
Yeah, so the situation is quite complicated, but I mean, basically, Devon County Council is responsible for the highway surface and for the highway. So if you've got 2 hedges, we are responsible for the area between the hedges, but it's quite complicated. So you absolutely need to speak to us. But obviously you might have a farmer who is managing that verge, or somebody else who's taken on responsibility for that. So talk to us, but also talk to anybody else, your parish council who might have taken on management of the verge, any local farmers, anybody else who might be involved. Otherwise it might just get cut at the wrong time.
Yeah.
So
is there a route to find out who landowners are if you can't do it by just asking around? Is that something that's quite difficult to do?
Not that I am aware of. I know that is pretty difficult, isn't it, through land registry and everything else, and data protection. So I would say that the community groups will have much more an idea of who the landowners are than we will, probably, and that we have data protection issues anyway. So yeah. Sorry.
I think one of the routes that was suggested to us is that sometimes your town councils or your parish councils can maybe do that on your behalf if they support, the project or whatever. But that's maybe a route perhaps people could try.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to talk. I mean, if it's an actual verge, then the local landowner might not be involved in it at all anyway. So.
Okay.
So they are if they're within the highway, they are DCC's responsibility, not the farmers. Whereas the farmers are responsible for hedges. Yeah.
Okay. Because some of them quite often will cut the verge when they do their hedge, don't they? They seem to drop the flail and run along the.
Yeah, exactly.
Along
they don't have to do it; they just do it. Yeah, unless they have a contract through the parish potentially.
Yes. Okay. So last question, sort of, I guess, around this, and I know from our experience that that there is a route through. It sort of seems complicated, but as you say, if you follow those steps and manage to talk to the people, then you can get guidance on those kind of things. I've got a question. I think I might leave this for everyone, but another one, I guess, for you, Sarah, about case studies. Are there sort of some case studies online, perhaps, that people can look? We heard about some of the plant life ones to see how some of the more community group projects have actually taken off. Is there something?
Yeah, so we have got a few case studies on the DCC web pages, and we also funded. So I worked with the Biosphere, so we had the North Devon Life on the Verge project as well. So the Biosphere Foundation have got information, but we do need to pick this up again. So it would be great if anybody is doing stuff in Verges and you've got any learning that you can share, to share it with us, and then we can put it on the website. That'd be brilliant. So Mike Waller, who's picking this up, we can give you his details. That'd be great.
That sounds excellent, actually. So I know from our perspective, it's been helpful talking to other groups that are trying to get off the ground as well with all this. Right, I'm going to ask Leo and Kate if they can join us just for the last sort of 10 minutes, really, because we had lots of questions that came through when you were both speaking. So excellent talks, raised lots of questions. And I'm going to go right back to the beginning, actually, which was an excellent one from Andreas for Leo. It's something that I've spoken to Leo about on numerous occasions, but I think it's a good one. Is there any discussion about having some of these green or wildlife bridges to connect verges like you see in Europe and the States?
Yeah, I think we're not as advanced as they are in the continent at the moment, because I know Germany and Holland, they build them by the dozen. Sometimes they have built quite a few. And one of the problems we have here is the cost to retrofit these green bridges. They're really expensive. Or new schemes, there are quite a few now being built across the country as part of new road sections, new bypasses. So they are gradually becoming more common. A few years ago, well, several years ago, I suggested one over Howden, connecting both sides of Howden Forest. And we got to the kind of detailed design stage, but then they decided it was going to be too expensive and they had other priorities. So they had to prioritize the investment. So the money went elsewhere. So, but yeah, they are becoming more and more common. And I'm hoping with this, as we progress, they'll become easier and faster to build.
Yes, yeah, it's sort of quite exciting projects, really. This is one sort of for all of you in a way, really, because when you see a verge that's been left for quite a while, which, as Sarah was saying, you know, some have now gone for a few years where they've not been cut at all, and we've got quite sort of thick bramble and scrub developing. You know, what's the sort of balance there between, you know, with benefits to wildlife? We may have lost some grass verge. We might not know what state that was in, but we do have a scrub habitat. You know, are we better intervening or better to leave it, you know, as it is? It's quite an uphill struggle, I guess, if you've got it quite thick with scrub to get a grassland habitat back, isn't it? Is anyone not sure who'd like to answer that one?
Leo should kick that off with his first one.
Yeah, I think what I do is it's important to keep a balance. Bramble is quite, depending where you are, bramble is quite invasive and will cover the ground quite quickly. So one of the things that I do is I cut as hard as I can, cut and collect. Maybe if you can cut twice a year from July onwards and collect all the risings. If you have time and resources, you can keep doing that for a couple of years. Otherwise, spot treatment might be an option, especially where I think in areas where you've got traffic management restrictions, or the problem with dust and some of the bigger, busier roads is the cost of traffic management. Because every time you close a lane, you're talking about thousands of pounds. And depending where you are, like the A38, for instance, we can only do that at night. So when you do have the luxury of a lane closure, then you just want to get the job done as quickly as possible. So what we often do is just cut and collect, treat the regrowth in the following spring. And then if you want to do something to enhance or use green hay, then you should be ready to do that by late summer.
Cool.
And
Okay.
I mean, that's an interesting difference, isn't it? So between Leo's roads and you know.
Yeah, so I'm introducing something completely different.
So I mean, if you've got a community group doing this, then you know you don't have the luxury of being able to do road closures in the first place, and it is a headache, you know. Yeah. So you know, I would say it all depends on the verge and the practicalities of the verge as much as anything, doesn't it, as to what you can achieve as a community group. But in an ideal world, then, as Leo said, you know, we have, you know, scrub is a really important habitat, but you know, the loss of meadows, wildflower meadows, is greater. And so if you can manage it, clear the scrub, get on top of it. It's a fun, very satisfying job to do. So do it. But you know, as a community group, you can only do it if you've got the resource, the time, lots of energy. So
yes.
Yeah.
Question for Kate, actually, maybe. Is that, and again, it's that on the community group scale. And you mentioned about, you know, getting rid of your arisings and cuttings. And also something I had noticed along the A38, that there are sort of, I assume, kind of habitat piles, if you like, but on sort of small, more urban verges, or perhaps where it's something that we're having a slight headache with, is it's great we can rake things off, but then we do generate huge piles of you know, grass cuttings. Do you have sort of some advice? And this is something that other people have brought up as well. Where do you stick it all if you haven't got a community composting scheme?
Yeah, quite. No, there's a few different ways. So some groups, I think there's a nice case study down from Kent Wildlife Trust, who have created sort of smaller habitat piles within the verge. So for some of it, even if not all of the, especially in the early years when you've got so much grass to try and cut back to get rid of, it is a bit of a problem. So where Dorset Council have sort of got around it by using sacrificial sites within the verge network, as it were. So other sites within the verge that you can sort of leave it to compost down for quite a few months, and then get rid of sort of anything that's left when there's a lot smaller volume of it coming onto the year. And there are, I think it's the Shropshire group are trying to link up with the biomass digesters in the area that farmers might have. They're sort of exploring the anaerobic digestion of the grass growth and incineration. So there are new ideas coming. It's definitely not a problem solved at the moment, but there are some ways around it and things happening.
Can I
Yeah,
just,
creative.
Tracy, on a practical level, I don't know if it was you, but there was a community group who got involved in managing a verge, cut it, and then took the arisings to the local waste site and were charged. And they were obviously not very happy. So I'm not quite sure where that got to. I don't know if anyone on this call is, but that is just something I just wanted to raise. Yeah.
I think I have heard of that happening, actually. So it wasn't us. Yeah. No, we're quite near the beginning of our journey, so we're trying to figure some of this out.
Yeah, community composting or something.
Yeah, well, that would be great. It's a whole nother project, isn't it? But that, these kind of things or systems would be ideal. There was a question actually about vehicle emissions, because both Leo and Kate mentioned the sort of increased sort of fertility of road verges. So do we think that shift to zero emissions is going to have some benefits for the wildflowers on verges?
Yeah, I think there was a study years ago. Remember, the nitrate accumulation can certainly enrich the soil around, and the closer you are to the road corridor, the higher the nutrient, the nitrogen content in the soil. I think that's certainly something that we will benefit. I think we all benefit from. Is now that the emissions tend to kind of be reduced. And I mean, if you imagine 30 years ago, we still have a lot of lead around, so that was even something else kind of polluting the soil. But I think as the vehicles, they become a lot more efficient, there is still a lot of things that are not really taken into account, which is there are lots of heavy metals in the components of the vehicles, things like hydraulic fluid, full of cadmium, battery fluid, all these things, they kind of they all end up either in the soil around the verges, or they go into the freshwater systems. Especially when it rains, you get that kind of under, the wash under your car. Those things. They it's just the sad thing. Road verges are great, but roads are horrible. Keep that in mind.
Yeah, it's an interesting one that we had as a plant life report from back in 2017 called "We Need to Talk About Nitrogen" and all of the sort of different problems it can cause, especially for road verges. But I think there's been a research paper published just this year or maybe last year, all about the effects of sort of pollution on road verges and how far that spreads from the road verges, roads outwards. But with all that considered, there's still so much benefits to the and the importance of road verge habitats themselves. But hopefully things are moving in a positive way.
Yes, we can just hope really for that, I think. I'm aware that we've actually run out of time. I think we could sit here and talk about this for ages. The talks have been recorded, so people watching can log in again and watch them as many times as they like. And all the questions that are in the comments boxes and things will be there as well. I hope you've got all the links. If we haven't put all the links up, then they'll come out in an email to you all afterwards. So it just really remains to me to say thank you enormously to our three guests tonight. That was really interesting, and I hope that we've inspired some parish councils and community groups and individuals all around Devon to get going on their verges and create some wonderful wildlife habitat. Just before we go, I just need to just say that we have one more talk in this series from Lynn Kenderdine from Devon Wildlife Trust on the 29th of April at 7:30, and she's going to be talking about how you create a nature recovery network. So it's all about linking landowners together and looking at how you get connectivity in your landscape. So I'll say good night and thank you very much for Donna and Steve as well behind the scenes, who are have been toggling us on and off and putting questions into the into the chat box. So thanks very much to our audience, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.